Evening, everyone. We'll get started with our green energy event. So tonight we're going to discuss kind of what makes energy companies really green, what positive kind of differences and ways are they working to actually help generate green energy, and also, I guess, discuss greenwashing a bit, because a lot of companies at the moment are greenwashing and making them appear green when they're not really. As you just saw, we are recording the event. We'll only record what's on the screen, but feel free to turn your video cameras off if you want to, okay? To start with, Zena's going to start by talking us through greenwashing, what makes energies truly green, all that sort of stuff. After that, we'll move on to the debate, which is our four main companies that we class as truly green. And they're going to have a little debate with each other, kind of raising which points are good with their company and perhaps what's not so good about the other companies. And then finally at the end, if people want to stick around for a workshop just to go through how to change, if anybody has any issues with that, we'll do that after the two main talks. Okay, and on to Zena, who's going to talk us through a bit more about green energy and what that really means.
Hello, thank you for coming to our event. It's nice to see so many people here. I'm part of the Coalition Building and Events Working Group of Climate Action, and we've put this event together, as is Lucy, and we've been researching this over the last couple of months and gathering information. So here goes. Obviously, or maybe here doesn't go, maybe here actually refuses to respond. Okay. We need to tackle the climate crisis, and in order to do that, the first and foremost thing that we need to do is to reduce our carbon footprint, both the UK's carbon footprint and the world's. And as individuals, the best way that we can do that, the most important way we can do that, is to reduce our energy use and to support other people to reduce our energy use and to push institutions and companies and governments to do it too. So, as well as reducing our energy use, though, we can also make sure that all the electricity that we buy is generated renewably in the UK, and that the energy company that we give the huge amounts of money that we pay for our energy bill to each year is actually only dealing in renewable energy, and that they aren't helping to fund the fossil fuel industry around the world. And then the third kind of aspect of that is that we can make sure that the company we're with actively supports the development of new additional renewable energy generation in the UK. So at the moment, 37% of the UK's electricity comes from renewable energy, which is pretty good, and it's going up quite fast, which is also good. But obviously, it actually needs to be all of the energy we use. And also, as we switch over to electric vehicles, to using electricity for home energy like heating with electric pumps, heat pumps, and electric vehicles around transport, then we need to generate a lot more electricity in order to meet the additional demand that is going to create, which again makes it really important that we reduce our energy use. So today's event is not about saying if you buy green energy, then you can use as much as you like, because that is not the case. The aim is to reduce our energy use and then to buy the rest through green energy. And the urgent need to increase renewable supply is why who we buy from matters, because some energy companies in the UK are actually supporting the development of new renewable energy generation, which is great. And in the meantime, a whole load of energy companies in the UK are claiming that they are selling 100% green energy, but actually they're doing nothing of the sort, and they're definitely not supporting renewable green energy development. So this is basically how the greenwashing works. This is kind of heart of how it works. If a renewable energy generator, let's say a wind farm or a solar farm, generates a megawatt hour of electricity, they get issued with a renewable energy guarantee of origin, which is called a REGO. So the EU version of that is called a GO-O, but it's essentially the same thing. It's a certificate that says a unit of renewable energy has been generated. But unfortunately, there's this thriving market for REGOs where they are sold separately to the actual green energy. that they were related to when they first got issued. And what that means is that companies can buy REGOs, but not buy renewable energy. And then they are entirely legally allowed to call themselves green and to say that they're selling green energy, even though they're not. What they have done is they have bought a certificate. And the issue is that the certificates typically cost about £1.50 to cover the energy use of a household for a year. Now, the average energy bill for a household for a year in this country is £1,300. It costs an energy company £1.50 to cover enough REGOs, to buy enough REGO certificates, to claim that all of that energy is green, even though actually that doesn't tell you that it is green, because they might have bought the green energy, or they might not have. The certificate doesn't tell you that they did. It just tells you that they bought the certificate. And as you can see, that makes it very, very easy for energy companies to greenwash themselves. So I don't know about you, but I would describe it as greenwashing when a supplier claims that it supplies renewable electricity, even though actually it does not buy renewable electricity and it does not generate renewable electricity. And I was walking through Leicester City Centre today, and Scottish Power were recruiting their recruitment cabin. The only thing it said on the cabin was 100% renewable electricity. Well, Scottish Power buy less than the national average of 37% renewable electricity. So presumably this is what they're doing. They're buying REGOs. This is a completely standard way of greenwashing. So just because you are buying from a green tariff from a company doesn't mean that that company is buying renewable electricity or supporting renewable generation, which are two separate things. And I've given you two lists here. The red list is the companies who are buying less than the national average of renewable energy. So I would say they are the people who are actively making a decision to support fossil fuels over renewable energy. And then the orange list is the examples of companies, some of which are buying renewable energy, but aren't buying all their renewable energy, and some of which are all of which are doing greenwashing in various ways, all of which are using REGOs, and all of which are questionable in various ways. And as you can see, it's a lot of companies. And there may well be other companies in the world that I have not listed, that I haven't managed to track down. But this is basically where we get to. So there are three warning signs that will tell you if your company is greenwashing itself. Firstly, if it says on its website that its electricity is certified by REGOs, this should be a warning bell, because it doesn't tell you that they're buying renewable energy. It should say that its electricity is purchased through power purchase agreements, PPAs. A PPA is basically a long-term contract or a medium-term contract with an energy generator. And it gives that generator security. So if they go to a renewable generator and they give them a contract and that they will buy their energy, then they are genuinely buying green energy. And not only that, they are giving that company the security to invest and expand their generation. So PPAs are a sign that a company is genuinely buying green energy, or at least some green energy. Obviously, your company needs to be buying all of its electricity through PPAs if you want to claim that all of its electricity is green. And the other warning sign is if your company talks about offsetting, carbon offsetting for its electricity, because obviously if your electricity is green, then ideally you shouldn't need to be carbon offsetting because your electricity is green. So these are your kind of warning signs. And I am talking tonight about electricity, and I'm also going to talk about gas in a minute, but I'm doing the electricity first because I think this is where we most notice the greenwashing happening at the moment. So Shell Energy are a really good example of greenwashing. If you look at their website, it says all of our energy comes from 100% renewable sources like wind, solar and biomass. And then it says it's all certified by REGOs, and they say, this means that all the electricity you buy from us is matched with the equivalent amount of units from 100% renewable sources in the UK. Well, yes, somewhere, someone has bought that energy, but there's no need for them to have bought it. So yeah, it's not actually matched. So What we do know about Shell Energy is that they invest 90% of their capital in fossil fuels, that they're actively campaigning against climate legislation across the world, that they're responsible for appalling human rights abuses in Nigeria and environmental degradation there, and in many other parts of the world as well, that they're drilling in the Arctic, that they're involved in fracking, that they're involved in tar sands. But all of our electricity comes from 100% green energy. And they can say that because they're buying REGOs. And this is how it works. And they're an extreme example. But, and they are an extreme example because actually none of the electricity they buy comes from renewable resources in reality. But other companies are doing this too. They're just an extreme example. So essentially, if you want to know that your company is genuinely supporting renewable electricity, and I'm not talking about gas here at the moment, in this country, then either it should be getting all its electricity from its own renewable generation, or it should be buying the electricity from other renewable generators in the UK using power purchase agreements, PPAs. So what you can do is you can either trawl your way through their website and see if you can pick this information up, and it's not always there, to be honest, or you could just directly ask them. You could ring them up or email them and say, tell me how much energy you supply to your UK customer base do you buy through power purchase agreements, and how much of it is generated in-house? How much of it is actually renewable energy that you are actually buying, not just that you've bought the certification for? So we would say, having done this research over the last couple of months, that there are 4 companies who are genuinely green when it comes to electricity. And they are all companies who are also thinking about gas as well. Gas is a more complicated issue, as I'm going to go into in a minute. And they are Good Energy, Green Energy UK, Ecotricity, and Ripple, who have a very different investment model. And I would only say that they're green if you invest enough money in them to cover all of your electricity supply. And Felicity's going to talk about that in a minute in the debate side. But if you invest enough money with Ripple to cover all of your electricity, then Ripple are a genuinely green option when it comes to your electricity, although probably not for your gas. So I'm now going to move on to the issue of gas. So various companies are starting to talk about biogas and switching over to biogas. And because these 3 companies really are very interested in being green, because that's actually why they were set up and why they exist, they are going down the green gas route. So biogas is made by feeding organic material into a biodigester, and what you feed in gets called feedstock. And what you put into the biodigester can come from a lot of different sources. So you could put in energy crops like corn or wood, which is what Drax Power Station now runs on wood. But it doesn't run on wood from the UK, which is just as well, because it uses more wood than in a year than the UK produces in a whole year. But it gets its wood from Inviva, which is an American firm. And they are involved in clear cutting hardwood forests. So this is a really good example of an energy crop where not only does it take land away from a previous use, but it actually destroys whole forests. It releases a whole load of carbon, a whole load of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, as well as destroying an environment. So energy fuels can be problematic. Another example of this would be corn prices are going up around the world. There are people in Latin America now going hungry because they cannot afford tortillas, because corn is now being grown for an energy fuel rather than as a food crop. And yeah, like I said, deforestation is being driven by the desire for wood as a feedstock for biogas, but also soya and palm oil are being used as biofuels, and they are driving deforestation as well. So biofuel feedstock tends to be commercially grown, and that means it uses, so either something is destroyed like a forest in order to feed it into your biodigester, or it's grown specially, in which case, it tends to involve machinery, it tends to involve fertilizers, it tends to involve damage to biodiversity. Energy crops are an issue. From waste, however, you can also get things that you can feed in as a stock for your biogas digester. So, for example, you can take sewage, or you can take animal manure, or you can take the gas that comes off a landfill site, and you can put those. In fact, if you take, waste from a landfill site, obviously you can either take the waste itself and put that in a biodigester, or you can literally capture landfill site gas, and you can take out the CO2 and just keep the methane, purify it down to the methane, and then you have a biogas. So biodigesters produce a mixture of CO2, carbon dioxide, and methane. And what happens when you want to buy gas is that you purify it by taking out the carbon dioxide, and often that's just released back into the atmosphere. It's a greenhouse gas, that's not great, but it could be captured and used for something. Or you and then you concentrate, you clean essentially the methane, and that methane can be put into the gas mains, because it's exactly the same as the fossil fuel methane that is in the gas mains. So yeah, there are loads of questions around biogas. And depending on what your feedstock comes from, you have a very different experience from a climate perspective, because obviously if you're causing deforestation, if you're causing the release of methane from, the devastation of land, things like that, if you're causing the shift of animals onto other land, these all push up footprints. There's one other issue when it comes to biogas, and that is methane leakage. Methane is a really powerful greenhouse gas. It comes from, it's a lot stronger than carbon dioxide. So if you leak it from your biodigesters, or if you leak it from your upgraders, which take your biogas and turn it into methane, as in take out the CO2, then obviously you have the potential to completely counteract the benefits of your green gas. And in the EU, there's not a great deal of research on this from the hunting around I was doing, but it seems like in the EU, it's thought that most biodigesters leak at a rate of 0.1% to 6%. But a leakage rate of above 1.5% would basically mean that the biogas digester was putting out more methane into the atmosphere, causing more climate change than if you hadn't done it to begin with. So obviously it really matters that you actually check whether you have a leakage issue. And at the moment, the UK does not require any kind of checks for biogas digesters. So this is the issue around green gases. They can be really good, but it actually really matters as to whether they're done well and what is fed into them. So when you think about green gas, the questions you can ask yourself is, where does the feedstock come from? What are the issues relating to feedstock? Is the methane leakage being monitored? Is it being controlled? And how much of the gas that company supplies is actually biogas rather than just carbon offset? Because most companies are carbon offsetting when it comes to gas. They're not actually supplying green gas. So this is my summary of where we get to. There are 3 companies which are selling some biogas and which are very good on electricity. And they are Green Energy, Good Energy, and Ecotricity. And I would say they are at least thinking about the issues around energy crops, although they're not brilliant. They are getting better, and they respond to public pressure because they're small companies. And Ripple, you will hear more about in a minute, are a different model. And they're about investing, basically becoming a shareholder in building a new wind farm. So they are only about electricity. If you go to Ripple, then you automatically get your gas from Octopus. So these are the companies we would say are genuinely green in the UK. We've done a whole load of research on the other companies, but I'm not going to go through all the other companies because there's loads and loads of them, but the information is there. So if any of you want to know about your specific company, or if you want to talk to me about the details of anything that I've talked about tonight, feel free to email Climate Action, which is leicesterclimateaction@gmail.com. And A is going to put that into the chat now. So if you turn on your chat, if you enable your chat, you will be able to see the links and things that we put in it over the next half hour. But that is my basic summary of where we are for companies. So We are now, I'd like to take questions. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat bar. And I will try and pick them out. Or alternatively, wave at me now and I will ask you to ask it. You can unmute yourself and ask it.
Could I ask a question, Zena? Thank you very much for that. I know nothing about this, but happily I buy from Ecotricity because my daughter told me to do so about 10 years ago. But I did no further homework on it than that. I'm a bit confused about how electricity companies can claim that. I think you've got a phrase there on that slide where it says that they can say that 100% of their electricity comes from renewable sources. I think that's part of the phrasing of the claim that they can make. Now I can see that they could say, you know, we're covered by these REGOs, and you know, they can make all kinds of claims around the REGOs, giving the impression of something that isn't true. But what I don't understand is how they can say that electricity comes from renewable sources when it doesn't come from renewable sources. Because that seems to me to be a claim which is factually incorrect, and therefore they could be prosecuted for it.
There are some requirements around the wording, but there's quite a lot of ways that they can get around the wording, and they are what they are doing is legal. Like, I don't think any of the companies we looked at were doing something illegal, but they are saying very clearly, yes, we are supplying 100% green electricity, and they're allowed to do that on the REGO system. The problem is with the REGO system, and that's what needs changing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Someone has in the side has said, are we covering LPG? No, I'm not going to try and cover LPG tonight, just electricity and the gas that you get through the mains, basically. Someone says, how do we change the REGO system? Well, Good Energy and Ecotricity at least are actively campaigning to get it changed, and the company, is it Ofgem, the energy regulator, they are starting to actually put people into a different category if they are genuinely green. And lo and behold, the three companies we've identified here are the only ones that they have actually identified as being in that new category. But I think there's a lot of campaigning that does need doing around it, and there are campaigns running around it. But I couldn't direct you actively to a particular campaign, but you could like work with an energy company. There are energy companies who are campaigning on this, the green energy companies. Someone has asked, are REGOs surrendered by the generator when they sell the green electricity? Okay, so if the person sells the electricity, they generate the electricity, they supply it to someone, that person then gets both a certificate and they get the green energy. They can then sell the green energy this way, and they can choose to sell the REGOs that way. So what happens is that companies that buy actual green electricity then have the option of putting it onto the market. And that's why there is this thriving market for REGOs. So there are companies who retire their REGOs, who actively don't put them into that market. Good Energy is an example of that. I haven't been able to find out whether Ecotricity do that or whether Good Energy do that. Octopus, I don't think do that, which means that Ripple would be questionable on that. But Good Energy, I know, retire their REGOs, and that means that they are not selling them on. But the thing is, most people who buy electricity just buy the general mix on the national grid. They're not interested. They don't have customers asking for green energy enough that it matters to them. And so, you know, why not sell on your REGOs, make a little bit of extra money? And that, I think that's probably how it works. It is a problem. Neil.
Yeah, I asked that question. It just intrigues me as to why the REGOs are not always just completely linked to the green electricity. And the fact that you can sell the green electricity and sell the REGO just seem, well, it is obviously a problem with the REGO system, isn't it? It just seems weird you can do that.
Yeah, it's a crazy system.
Yes.
Chris, do you want to unmute yourself?
How do we stop using gas if we live in very small old houses? So we haven't got the space for the big equipment for the, I don't know what all those things are called, there's a heat sourcing system, but you literally do not physically have room for it. And you've probably got too small a roof for solar panels.
I couldn't answer that question easily, but I would say, obviously you insulate your house as much as possible, and then you get an air source heat pump, because I don't think an air source heat pump takes up space. It's much like having a boiler, but it's an expensive thing. It requires you to have money. So yeah, the first point is to insulate, reduce your energy use, and then to do the rest of your heating with something like an air source heat pump. And make sure that the electricity you buy to run your air source heat pump comes from genuine renewable sources. But there isn't an easy answer. You're right, it's a really difficult situation with the housing stock in this country. Anybody else want to ask any specific questions? I can talk about specific companies. If you want to know about your specific company, I can.
Yeah, can I just ask about prices? And this may not fall within your remit this evening, but if I'm trying to persuade other people to move towards ecotricity, for example, or one of the other two, which is good, do we know? I think Ecotricity used to claim that they did not sell more, their stuff was not more expensive than the big six, I think they described them as. And I don't know whether that's still the case or not, but I just wondered if there are some arguments around there that we can use to try and persuade people who might be persuadable that they can switch without breaking the bank.
I would say that the energy companies vary in cost, and Ecotricity is relatively expensive, but Good Energy are quite a bit cheaper. We checked out the costs when we were researching this. Green Energy come in at £114 for a typical gas bill. Ecotricity come in at 124. Good Energy come in at 82, I think. No, 80. They're not as cheap as the really cheap companies, but they are not shockingly expensive either. And they run tariffs like time of day tariffs, which would enable you to choose what time of day you used your energy if you wanted to reduce your energy use, if you wanted to use your electricity at particular cheaper times of day. Some of them run tariffs that would support you to do that. Green Energy are particularly good on that, and so are Ecotricity. So there are some ways around cost, but yeah, cost is an issue. Ecotricity and Green Energy do offer the warm homes thing for elderly people, but Good Energy doesn't. So yeah, it's not an easy one, that one.
Thank you.
Other questions? Unmute and ask if you have other questions.
So Zena, I'm with Ecotricity, but I was considering switching to Octopus or Bulb because they are very good at promoting how good and how green they are. So I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about maybe Bulb and Octopus and how they're misleading us. And I'm going to stick with Ecotricity, which is good.
Okay. So Octopus, they are backed by Regos, but they own some renewable generation. And they own quite a lot of renewable generation. They are responsible for 40% of the UK's solar generation, and they're 50% owner of one of the biggest investors in renewable in Europe. So they do genuinely invest in renewables. However, they are 20% owned by one of the biggest gas companies in Australia. And they give donations to the Conservative Party, which may or may not be an issue for you. And they use carbon offsetting, and they are very misleading in terms of the greenwash. So yeah, that would be my summary of Octopus. But they are really trying to increase the generation across the UK and across Europe. And that's why they are backing Ripple. You know, Ripple wouldn't exist without Octopus, and that's why you have to buy your gas from Octopus and your electricity via Octopus if you go to Ripple. And we are promoting Ripple because we thought it was a really good idea. So Bulb, let's see if I can find Bulb. I think I had, yeah. They do 3% green gas, but it's almost entirely grown from purpose grown energy crops. They offset their gas. They used to be very coal intensive, and they're using REGOs. We don't know how much of their energy comes from let me just have a look. Yeah, so they say 100% of their energy is renewable, but in fact, they don't buy any of it through power purchase agreements. So from our perspective, that's greenwash. Yeah, I'm afraid we couldn't find out that much about Bulb, to be honest. But do you notice they cost pretty much the same as good energy? Other questions? Let me show you this. This is a thing. I'm sorry it's so small, but this is a summary by the Ethical Consumer. So the Ethical Consumer were a really useful source of information here when we were doing the research. And what this table shows you is all these companies claim to be 100% green, but all the ones that are orange are greenwashing themselves, whereas the ones at the top are genuinely green. And then the ones at the bottom, these ones down here, EDF, npower, PFP, Scottish Power Utility Warehouse, they're the ones who are actually getting less than the national average when it comes to renewable energy. So if you subscribe to the Ethical Consumer, this is the kind of information they put out, but they put it out on loads of different products. They don't only cover electricity, they cover computers and they cover jam and they cover washing powder, and they do it. So they're a really useful source of information for this, and they were our background start point for a lot of our research. Nicola. You'll need to unmute yourself.
I'm trying to. Yes, I was going to ask about Scottish Power, because they do some green tariffs that say they are 100% from their own renewables.
Yeah, so the green tariff is bought through power purchase agreements, but none of the rest of their energy is bought through power purchase agreements. And they claim that all of their energy is 100% green. So they're doing major greenwashing. But if you buy from their green tariff, that bit of their energy is bought through power purchase agreements.
Which is the right kind.
Which is the right kind. But obviously, the rest of the energy they buy is not.
Yeah, but yeah. And I know you're keen on divestment rather than engagement, but it is the stuff.
Absolutely, yes.
Octopus, I've got a similar thing with Octopus, where it's the green energy one. Is that guaranteed as well or not?
So Octopus buy some of their stuff through power purchase agreements, and they do actively support new generation, but they also supply a whole load of energy that is not green, but which they claim is green.
Right, could we have a quick look at OVO as well, if you're going through some of the companies?
Yeah, I'm going to do OVO, and then I'm going to call a halt to this because we have run over time. So let me jump into OVO. Half a second, I'm going to try and share my screen again. Sorry, I can't see you all, and I can't see who raises their hands when I am not. Here's OVO. 20% of what they buy comes from power purchase agreements and the rest is greenwashed, but they claim to be 100% renewable. They sell green gas, or so they claim to sell green gas, but green gas is backed by REGO, RGGGOs, which is the equivalent of REGOs, but for gas. And they are 21% owned by Mitsubishi, who are, one of the big aviation car companies in the world, and they're involved in arms dealing and palm oil. So, from a climate perspective, Mitsubishi are a real problem. So yeah, I wouldn't personally feel like OVO was a good option. So I am sorry to call a halt to all these questions, but I'm going to hand back to Lucy, and we can jump into the debate bit on. So this is the differences. Obviously, the 4 companies that we're talking about here are companies we feel making a real difference when it comes to green electricity, and they're starting to think about green gas. And So I'm going to hand back to Lucy now, and we're going to talk about the differences between those 4 companies.
Yeah, we're gonna just have the 4 companies, and one person each is representing a company. We've got Andrew, who's representing Ecotricity, who's going to start off in a second. We've got Mel, who's representing Green Energy, Akash with Good Energy, and Felicity with Ripple. I'll just briefly brush over Ripple because it is a bit different. With Ripple, you're investing in a wind farm essentially, and the only way we can kind of lump it into our 4 main companies is if you invest enough to cover all of your energy usage for the year. These 4 speakers are all from Climate Action in Leicester and Leicestershire, sorry, and they've just advocated for these companies because they like them really. But just to summarise, all these companies are good. They're all very similar to one another, but there are a couple of differences here and there, which will hopefully help you have a better idea of which one suits you best. Okay, let's start with Andrew then, who's talking about Ecotricity to start with.
Hi folks. Okay, so I think my starting point for thinking about this stuff isn't so much like which one is actually the cleanest or the greenest, it's how does my impact as a consumer change the future of energy? What difference does it make for the future? So I'm going to argue provocatively that it doesn't actually matter necessarily whether it's green. However, Ecotricity are very good, and that's great. So everything they supply is renewable. They own a lot of generation that they've invested in themselves. They have solar parks and wind parks. The rest they purchased through PPAs, as Zena's explained. The gas we'll come on to, but they sell bio, which they're looking to do it through growing grass. I'm not sure where they source it at the moment, but it's not from animal products. So they make a big thing about being a vegan company as well, Ecotricity. For the rest of it, they do carbon offsetting. It's mostly wind if you buy from Ecotricity, some solar and hydro. One of the crucial things about them that I think is very positive is all their profits are reinvested in new green energy production. And for me, that's the point of choosing your company. What's it doing about the future? And they're investing that money in new renewable sites. They do political campaigning as well. So they've been doing lobbying for, they're the first company to declare a climate emergency. They've given donations to political parties quite tactically, not ideologically. So Greens, Labour, Lib Dems over the last 15 years, and often focused on saving a particular seat with Renewable Energy Advocate in that post, that sort of thing. And they do lots of stuff around the connections between energy and other systems, because it's all connected, as we've discussed already. So, switches to electric vehicles will impact upon the electricity network. They've got probably the most sustainable football club in the world, maybe, Forest Green, which is doing lots of really innovative stuff in the world of sport. They're looking at land use issues in relation to their green gas supply. So they're really thinking about the systems of the future, not necessarily in ways everyone will agree with, but really trying to help innovation. You can see the cost details. I should add, I'm not a customer of any of these companies. I live off grid, but I just like the way they work. Next slide, I think there's one more slide on Ecotricity. I'm trying to keep to 2 minutes, so if this seems fast, that's why. In terms of gas, so they're looking to invest in kind of new biomass production, which I think is an interesting kind of thing around them. And if you look at their website, essentially their view was that the future was to do away with gas and just do everything with electricity and do heating with electricity. And they've kind of changed their stance, I assume, based on some good evidence, but I've not seen that evidence. So that's why their vision is grow more grass, turn it into gas through digestion and conversion. So there's loads of debate about what we do for the future of heating our homes, of course, and we've touched on that already. No answers are easy. They're all messy and difficult and expensive. I don't know whether this is the answer. It sounds very problematic to do that on scale, but it's good to see there's someone trying it out at least. So that's what I'd say in their defense. Okay, there's a quick overview of Ecotricity.
Thank you, Andrew. We're going to move on to Mel in a second. I'll just quickly say I worked out the prices for my house. I live in Anstey in a 2-bedroom terraced house, if you're wondering where those values came from. So on to Mel, who's going to talk about green energy now.
Hi everyone, can you hear me all right, Lucy? Can you do me a nod? Great, excellent. Hi, I'm sorry I'm not on screen today. I'm having a few internet problems, but I'm Mel and I am a happy green energy customer. And before I go into some of the points on the slide, I will just address a point that's been brought up in the chat, which is around communicativeness, I guess, of the company. And one of the things I really like about green energy is I can ring them up and I don't think there's even a call waiting service, and I get to speak to somebody very quickly. And so that's been really great. We've had green energy for our home and also had it for my mum's home as well. So I'm not sure what they can do about offline, because we do get our bills online, but they may be an option for that, and they're certainly very approachable and easy to talk to. So I'm with Green Energy. I'm very pleased that this last 2 months ago, Ethical Consumer put them at the top of their ethical consumer table, and it's 100% renewable energy. It's from the power purchase agreement, so one of the differences, they don't generate their own, which some of the other companies do. It's 100% green gas and all from waste. So gas is problematic, but at least it's from waste. Although I know that some people would be concerned about some of it coming from farm waste and what that might be. But at the moment, while we still need loads of gas, creating it from waste seems to be a sensible thing to do. They have a new tariff, because we didn't know about this tariff until I was preparing for this, called the EKO tariff, which includes additional sustainability criteria and includes supporting projects in the global south, including for habitat protection. I will want to look at the wood for the biomass there as well before we go on to the eco tariff, but that is something we're thinking of doing now that we know about it. The other thing that's great about it is they're doing time of day tariffs for those who want to do that. And if and or when we go for an air source heat pump, there will be an opportunity then to not only be 100% green electricity and no gas whatsoever, but also to use the sort of situation in order to buy electricity for the heat pump at a time when the grid has surplus. So again, that's another positive there, and pay less for it as well. I think that's my main points, and I'll pass over the next person. I'll pass back to Lucy.
Thank you, Mel. We've got Akash next, who's going to chat to us a bit about good energy.
Hey everyone. So I'm going to talk about 5 key points about good energy that I want everyone to remember at the end. So one of them is that they produce 100% renewable energy from PPAs and their own generation through businesses and local people and their own customers. 2, they on average have the cheapest green energy. As you see at the bottom, it's £80 a month, which compared to the others is cheaper on average per year. And not only that, but they're the only ones that actually provide you with a heat pump tariff. So if I think it was Chris, I was talking about it earlier, that maybe they want to switch to heat pumps in the future, but and Good Energy actually have tariffs to accommodate for that. And in the future, they do plan to actually sell heat pumps and solar panels to those who do want it. So those are another key things that Good Energy do. Third thing they do is lobbying. So this includes campaigning on greenwashing and currently working with the government on something called the Renewable Nation report, which works with the government and the energy ministers and talk about how to reach the net zero goals that the government have currently set, and are working with them very closely. The fourth one is future proofing, which means so Good Energy are actually part owners of ZapMap. If anybody's got electric vehicles here, you normally use ZapMap to find your local charging stations, and so part owners with that and are working with them. And lastly is transparency and gas. So everything that you need to know about Good Energy is on the website, and they try to be as transparent as possible. This is because they are a publicly owned company and most of their shareholders are actually customers of Good Energy. So Yeah, and most of the gas, as you can see on screen in front of you, is from biogas, and the rest of it is from carbon offsetting. But they have said before that they want to move more into using heat pumps to provide that that heating for your homes rather than using gas. And I think that's my quickest summary of good energy that I have.
Awesome, thank you, Cash. Now I've got Felicity who's talking about Ripple Energy.
Hi everybody. So I came across Ripple when my partner and I were looking at investing in ways of kind of being more green. So we're looking at insulating our home and things like that. And I think what's really interesting about Ripple is essentially, it's, as Lucy said at the beginning, it's very different to the other energy suppliers. It is not an energy supplier, it is an energy generator. So it might be more helpful to think about investing in Ripple like investing in putting solar panels on your house, for example. So you're actually investing in generating electricity. So in the case of Ripple, you're actually investing in a wind turbine in Wales, which is, I think, being built at the moment. You become a shareholder in that wind farm. And as a result of your shares, part of the dividends that you receive is actually the amount of shares that you purchase. You receive that amount of energy that the wind farm is generating, that proportion of the energy that the wind farm is generating back. And the way that they do that is by partnering with an energy supplier. So at the moment, the only energy suppliers that they are partnered with are Co-op Energy and Octopus, who actually own Co-op Energy. So it's basically all Octopus. And Zena's talked about how Octopus isn't the most straightforward of companies. They do have some good green things going for them, but they also have some problematic elements. However, I think what's really interesting about Ripple is they're trying to change the way that we are engaging with energy. And they hope that instead of just solely being tied to Octopus going forward, you'd actually be able to have your shares in the wind turbine, but be able to get your kind of payback from that, if you like, your dividends from that through additional energy suppliers. So my hope would be that in a few years' time, actually some of these other companies will be buying energy from Ripple via power purchase agreements, and therefore you could be getting all the benefits of those companies in the future as well. So I think it's a really interesting option in order to invest to cover the cost of a 2 to 3 bedroom terraced house. It'd be about £2,000. So it's not an insubstantial amount of money, but it is, as I say, more for people who think about investing in things of a green nature rather than necessarily just energy supply.
Now we're going to have all of the companies kind of discuss their pros with one another and kind of challenge each other on those. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat and I'll try and feed it through whilst we're doing the debate side of things as well. All right. So go ahead. Does anybody want to start us off with any challenging points out of any of those companies? Andrew, do you want to? I thought you raised your hand, but that was my mistake.
I was just going to say, who can get more direct in their investment in green energy than buying shares in a wind farm? Go.
Go on, Akash.
This is a question more for ecotricity, actually good energy first of all. Is that do good energy do not good energy, sorry, green energy. Do they do any sort of campaigning or some sort of lobbying for in green energy or greenwashing in any forms?
So I don't know the answer to that, Akash, and it's a good question, and I should look into it. As far as I know, so there's two sides to that, aren't there? So there's the lobbying side, and then there's also the political party involvement. And I believe they aren't involved in giving donations to political parties. And I think I feel better about that. But I don't. But on the flip side, I'm not aware that they're lobbying for green energy as part of the way they work. So I think it's a great question, and I'm afraid I don't know the full answer.
I throw in?
One thing I will say, oh, sorry, Andrew.
You carry on.
One thing I will say about green energy, which I think does make it stand out, is that none of not only is it 100% biogas, but it's not from biofuel, so it's all from waste. So I think that is quite a significant difference with green energy. And also, just to go back to something that Charlotte put in the chat earlier, we find the way that they represent the billing to us pretty easy to understand. I had a quick look at it before I came on today, and yeah, I'd say it's pretty easy to understand. It's quite easy to compare what you've used in the past and things like that. But it is online, the one that we've got experience of. And they've also installed a smart meter for us, but I'm imagining most companies are now doing that. But that also makes the billing easier and more obvious. And the last thing is that we've got solar panels, and so green energy do pay us for our generation. So in that sense, I suppose it's almost, yeah, we are a mini generator for green energy in that way. And then they pay us a percentage of what we generate, because they assume that we use about half of it, and they pay us for the rest.
Akash, do you have another one?
Yeah, so sort of following on from what Mel was saying before about how green energy give them money for the electricity that they sort of provide, and you just want to add out about good energy, which I think have the largest amount of sort of customers that produce their own electricity, and not only that, but one of the few that actually give you a good enough feed-in tariff, as it's called, but that's basically another word for we give you money for the electricity you produce. And very soon, I think Good Energy are actually planning to sell solar panels to its customers. So if you were a Good Energy customer, you basically get you get solar panels, you get the feed-in tariffs. So essentially, you'll be creating electricity and making money from it in a way.
I guess I'd say if you invest with Ripple, you could potentially be creating green energy, and if you invested enough, also making money from it. And I guess the argument for Ripple is about if you're investing in micro generation, the economies of scale in investing in a wind farm or a wind turbine are such that actually it's much more efficient to generate electricity from a massive wind turbine than it is from solar panels on your roof. So if you really want bang from your buck in terms of your own generation, Ripple would be a good option if you don't already have solar panels or space to put them.
Jen, do you want to ask a question? You can unmute yourself if you like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think I'm unmuted. Yeah. So I mean, I acknowledge, I think, the vision of Ecotricity turning loads and loads of land into crops for energy, for gas. Sounds intuitively like it's not a good idea. However, it's a vision, and it's a sense of how the gas heating system might go, and they're having a go investing in it. And for me, that's the purpose of energy companies. I don't think it actually matters whether or not the consumption attributed to us is green or not. It's about how we use our consumer power to change the future. And so with that in mind, a challenge for the other companies, what vision are they working towards? So if you look at the green energy, for example, energy from waste, of course, do it. It makes sense. It'll happen anyway. And it's being attributed to the niche customers of green energy. Brilliant. However, what's the vision there? We can't have energy from waste powering the whole country. So do any of the other companies have a sense of where we might go with heating our homes? And do they put statements out and do projects around that?
Akash.
Yeah, so to basically answer Andrew's question, so there's a couple of things that Good Energy are planning to do. And one of them, if I can find it, I think it's called the Good Energy Hub. So that's basically using technology very similar to what you get from smart meters. I'm guessing a lot of people might see adverts for smart meters and telling you to get it. So what Good Energy does is uses graphs and so analyzes how much electricity everyone's using or gas, and so adjusts their prices according to that. not only that, but in terms of heating their own homes. So as I mentioned before, Good Energy actually are one of the few that offer tariffs for heat pumps. And so if you were to in the future switch to heat pumps, which Good Energy, I think, are planning to sort of sell to customers and to everybody else, that you could heat your home with a heat pump, but also have a tariff to sort of accommodate to what you have.
Yeah. I don't know if Mel, if you have anything that you want to say before we ask questions.
I've actually wanted to ask Felicity, because I'm not quite clear on the Ripple model. So do you invest, so when you invest in Ripple, is that effectively you also paying your energy bills in advance, or do you, in addition to your investment, pay your energy bills based on what you've used? That's what's confused me a bit about that.
Yeah, so you pay your investment up front, and then you get a percentage based on the amount of the turbine that your investment covers. You get a percentage of the energy the turbine has generated equivalent to your share, and you get that back through your energy bill. So it's offset within your energy billing. So you essentially end up with lower energy bills, or potentially all of your energy costs completely covered if you've invested heavily enough in Ripple. So you pay an upfront amount of money to invest in the wind farm being built, and then you get the benefit of that within your normal energy bills through Octopus or Co-op Energy. And I would just say about that question, I think I like the question Andrew raised about vision for the future. And I think, just to say, I think Ripple's vision would be that communities invest in their own wind generation. And I think that's a really lovely and very sustainable kind of model. So actually taking direct responsibility for the amount of energy that you're using as a community, and it's a cooperative model. So I think it has a real appeal to me from that point of view.
Fab. I think James, a couple of minutes ago, wanted to ask a question. We can't hear you, James. I can't hear you anyway. No. You can, I don't know if you can type it in the chat, that might be useful.
In the meantime, Mel, did you want to say something?
I was just going to add that if cost is an issue, then green energy's tide tariff could be a really good option if it's a particularly big issue, because you can then manage your energy according, you know, you can put your washing machine on it overnight and all those sorts of things, which mean that you can manage your energy bills through your usage and have a much lower bill. I think it's it was about £97 per month on the tide tariff. And also just to say that our bills compared to what you worked out, Lucy, we're in a 3-bed semi and the two of us are basically, there was only one bill in 6 months that went above the amount that you had put in, and now we're all under. Keeping in mind that we're very low energy users, we've got a very well insulated house, and we've got solar panels.
So James's question was just asking about bulb a little bit more, whether there's actually any good points in relation to bulb. I don't know if Zena, if you know anything much more about that off the top of your head, or anybody else in fact.
Yeah, and I do have this information somewhere in front of me. It's a case of finding it. So take one more question and then I will come back.
I was going to say, might that be one for the workshop, Zena?
I don't know if any of our 4 companies want to raise any last points that they want to highlight with everybody before we wrap it up. Yeah, Akash.
Yeah, just a literally last point, but I think Good Energy have a gold standard award from Uswitch. So so Uswitch have enlisted independent panel, and they've reviewed all the different energy suppliers, and they've rated good energy to be the best one, essentially the gold standard. And I think other companies such as Ecotricity, I believe, got the bronze one, if I can remember off the top of my head. So yeah.
Coming back to that question about bulb, I think the main point in their favour is that they were very, very coal intensive, and that they have reduced their use of coal by 73%, so that they are really working on reducing their coal. But I have to say, I don't think they shine on the renewables front.
Okay. Right, I think we'll leave it there on the debate side of things. So thank you very much for that, everyone. Just to summarise, I guess, those are 4 main companies. The reason they're, above and beyond the others is because they are actively trying to generate green energy themselves, whereas the other ones are just buying certificates to try and claim that they're green energy. If anybody has any difficulty switching or has any problems or questions about switching, we are running a workshop up next, where we'll hopefully be able to answer some of those questions and help you with that. But thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you gained some insight with all of that, and hopefully discovered which company is best for yourselves. I don't know if Zena wants to say one last word.
Yeah, I would say, if you want to talk to me about your particular energy company, or if you want to talk to me generally about the information that we uncovered, you're welcome to contact me through the climate action email. And I'm really happy to have a phone conversation with you. Because yeah, I've been burying myself and getting obsessed about this for the last 2 months, and it's always nice to share the work that I've done, because there's huge amounts that we've dug out that we haven't managed to have time for tonight. But thank you very, very much for coming. And if you want to stay on for the How to Switch workshop, then you're very welcome.